Months passed. The world did not forget, but it began to live again. The skies stayed clear. No black ships, no pulses, no nightmares from the sky. Farmers planted their fields. Kids went back to school. Cities hummed with life. Cars, music, laughter. The fear was still there, deep in some hearts, but it no longer ruled. People had faced the impossible and survived. In Wyoming, where the wrecked ship had hung like a curse, a small memorial was built, not for war, not for death, but for courage. A simple stone circle with names of the towns affected, Anchorage, Silver Creek, Northern Michigan, and one message carved in the center: "We did not break." Luke Hawthorne visited it once, alone, on a quiet morning. He stood there for a long time, hands in his coat pockets, breath turning to mist in the cold air. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Peace, maybe. Proof it had all been real. Maya found him there later that day. "Thought you'd be at the lab," she said. He turned and smiled. "Needed to see it with my own eyes." "It's real," she said. "We really did it." He nodded. "I keep thinking, what if they come back? What if there are others like them? Then we'll be ready," she said, "and this time we won't wait." They had spent the months after the battle building something new. Not weapons, not bombs, but a network, a global warning system powered by the Phoenix signal. Satellites now carried calm frequencies, ready to broadcast at the first sign of psychic attack. Schools taught children how to focus, how to breathe, how to stay strong when fear tried to take over. It wasn't about war. It was about balance. And it worked. In Finland, when a strange object was spotted in the sky, just a weather balloon it turned out, the calm signal went out automatically. People stayed still. They checked facts. They didn't panic. The story faded in a day. In Brazil, a deep-sea sensor picked up an odd energy pulse from the ocean floor. Some feared another Virax nest, but scientists investigated. It was a volcanic vent, releasing natural gases. No threat, no fear. The world had learned, but not everyone had moved on. Lucy Bennett still woke up some nights in a cold sweat. She'd sit up, heart racing, hand reaching for the rifle by her bed. The dreams came, dark shapes in the trees, voices in the wind, the feeling of being watched. She'd light the lamp, check the doors, breathe slowly until the fear passed. The dog, she'd named him Scout, would nudge her hand, whining softly. "I know," she'd say. "I'm okay. We're okay." She didn't go back to the base. Didn't give interviews. Didn't want medals. She had done what she had to do. Now she wanted quiet, peace, the smell of pine, the sound of rain on the roof, the feel of soil between her fingers as she planted tomatoes in her garden. But the world hadn't forgotten her. A letter came one day, hand-delivered by a park ranger. Inside was a note from a girl in Alaska. "Dear Lucy," it read. "I was in Anchorage when it happened. I was 8. I don't remember much, just screaming and my mom holding me. I woke up 3 days later. The doctor said I was lucky. I think you're the reason. Thank you for not giving up. I want to be strong like you when I grow up." Lucy read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a small wooden box on her shelf, next to a seashell, a photo of her old Coast Guard team, and a bullet she'd kept from the fight. She didn't think of herself as a hero. She thought of herself as someone who had refused to run, and that, in the end, was enough. Back in Nevada, Luke and Maya were preparing for something new, not a defense, an outreach. "We've been looking out," Luke said during a team meeting. "Now it's time to look up." They had rebuilt one of the old deep space antennas, not to listen for threats, but to send a message, not of fear, not of war, of hope. The signal was simple. Music, voices, images of Earth, forests, oceans, children playing, people helping each other. A single line repeated in many languages. We are here. We are kind. We are strong. Someone might hear it. Maya said. Aliens, travelers, maybe even the Vrax's enemies. Or no one, Luke said. But it's important to try. To say we are not prey. We are alive, and we care. The signal launched on a clear night, shooting into space at the speed of light. It would take years to reach even the closest star. Maybe no one would ever hear it, but the act of sending it mattered. Meanwhile, in a small town in Kansas, Daniel Ruiz, the firefighter who had stayed calm during the fear tests, opened a training center. He taught people how to control panic, how to focus under pressure, how to find strength when everything felt dark. Fear is natural, he told a group of teenagers, but you don't have to let it drive. You can be the driver. Kids came from all over. Police, medics, even soldiers. They didn't learn to fight with guns. They learned to fight with their minds. And it worked. One night, Lucy drove into town to get supplies. The store was small, lit by warm yellow lights. A radio played softly. Country music, then a news update. And in science news, researchers have found no trace of Vrax energy anywhere on Earth. The planet is clear. Experts say the threat has passed, but the lessons remain. The man at the counter smiled at her. You believe all that? I lived it, she said. He nodded. We all did, in a way. As she left, a little girl ran up to her, holding a crayon drawing. It showed a black ship in the sky and a woman with a rifle standing in front of a town. The words at the bottom said, Thank you, Hunter. Lucy knelt down. You drew this? The girl nodded. My teacher told us about the brave people who saved us. You were one of them. Lucy looked at the drawing, then at the girl's face, bright, curious, unafraid. Keep being brave, she said, handing it back. You'll need it more than me. That night, she sat on her porch again. Scout lay beside her. The stars were bright. She looked up and whispered, We're still here, and somewhere in the vast silence of space, the Phoenix signal traveled on, carrying laughter, love, courage, into the unknown. The Vrax had come to feast. They had found something they could not eat. They had found Earth, and Earth had said no. The Vrax ship cracked like dry ice in fire. Long, jagged lines split its surface, glowing with a hot white light from within. The deep hum that had filled the sky since its arrival began to waver, rising in pitch, turning from a predator's growl into something like a scream. Then, without warning, it broke apart. Not in a single explosion, but in slow, shuddering pieces. Great chunks of black material peeled away and tumbled through the air, burning as they fell. Some landed in forests, starting small fires. Others crashed into empty fields, vanishing into craters of dust and steam. The core of the ship glowed brighter and brighter, until with one final pulse it burst into a silent flash of light that lit up the morning sky like a second sun. And then, silence. No hum, no pulse, no fear. Just wind, birds. The distant sound of a dog barking. In the research base in Nevada, people stood frozen, staring at the screens. The signal had worked. The Vrax were gone. Maya covered her mouth with her hand. Tears rolled down her face. Luke sat back in his chair, breathing hard, as if he had just run a mile. It's over, he whispered. No one cheered at first. Too much fear had passed through them. Too much pain. They just looked at each other, unsure if they could believe. And then slowly someone clapped, then another. Then the whole room filled with noise, laughter, crying, shouting. A scientist hugged a soldier. A young tech jumped up and down, yelling into the phone, Mom! Mom! We did it! Outside, the sky turned blue again. Lucy Bennett stood on the roof of the base, watching the last pieces of the ship burn up in the atmosphere. They looked like falling stars. Beautiful. Peaceful. She didn't smile. Not yet. She had seen too much. She knew fear didn't just go away because the monster left. It stayed in the mind, in the dreams, in the way people jumped at loud noises. But it was over. She turned and went back inside. In the days that followed, life began to return. Power came back. Phones worked. TV stations broadcast again. The emergency message changed. The threat has passed. You are safe. Hospitals filled with people waking up. Thousands who had been frozen in fear, now blinking, confused but alive. Doctors called it a miracle. Survivors called it luck. Scientists called it a breakthrough in brain resilience. But most people just called it hope. In towns and cities, people gathered in parks, not in fear, but in relief. They lit candles. They hugged strangers. They played music. In New York, a crowd sang "Lean on Me" in Union Square. In Los Angeles, a group of kids painted a mural of a broken black ship with the words, "We stood together." Lucy didn't stay at the base long. Once she knew the signal had worked, once she saw the reports coming in, she packed her bag. Luke found her loading her truck. "You're leaving?" he asked. She nodded. "I've done what I came to do. You saved lives. You helped stop them." "We stopped them," she said. "Not just me." He looked down. "I spent my life studying the stars, trying to understand what's out there. I thought the universe was full of wonders. Now I know it's full of danger too." "Maybe," Lucy said, "but it's also full of us." He smiled a little. "What will you do now?" "Go home," she said. "Check on my land, plant a garden, maybe adopt a dog." He laughed. "After fighting aliens, gardening sounds boring." "No," she said. "It sounds normal. And after all this, normal is exactly what we need." She got in the truck and drove away. Weeks passed. The world healed slowly. Some people still had nightmares. Some couldn't sleep without a light on. But they talked. They helped each other. Support groups formed. Schools taught kids how to stay calm under stress. Scientists studied the data, hoping to understand what had happened, and how to protect Earth if something like the Vrax ever returned. Luke and Maya kept working. They turned the Phoenix signal into a global project, broadcasting calm during disasters, helping people in crisis. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a tool, a reminder. One evening, Luke stood outside the base, looking up at the stars. Maya joined him. "Thinking about them?" "Not the Vrax," he said. "The others, out there. If the Vrax were real, what else is?" She followed his gaze. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." "Do you think they'll come back?" "I don't know," she said. "But if they do, they'll find a different Earth. One that doesn't just run, one that fights, not with hate, not with fear, but with this." She held up a small speaker, playing a recording, a choir singing, soft and strong. Luke smiled. "Let them come. We'll be ready." Far away, in a quiet cabin in Montana, Lucy sat on her porch. The fire crackled. The stars shone bright. A new dog, a scruffy mutt she'd found near Silver Creek, lay at her feet. She sipped her tea and looked up. No black ships, no pulses, no fear, just peace. And then faintly from the radio inside, a child's voice. "Thank you," it said, "for not being afraid." Lucy closed her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. The Vrax had come to feast on fear. They had not counted on courage. They had not counted on people like Lucy, who walked into the dark. People like Luke and Maya, who fought with knowledge and hope. People like the ones who sang, who held hands, who said, "I'm still here." The deadliest predators in the universe had made one mistake. They thought Earth was weak. They thought fear meant prey. But Earth had something they could not eat, something they could not break. It was called the human spirit, and it was stronger than the dark. The small Vrax ship fled into the sky, trailing dark smoke like blood from a wound. Lucy Bennett watched it go, her rifle still in hand, her heart pounding. The fire from the thermite charges burned low, casting long shadows over the broken town. The two people she had freed lay on the ground, breathing slow and deep, like people waking from a long, bad dream. She knelt beside them, checking their pulses. Steady. Their faces were pale, but the terror was gone. One of them, a man in a torn flannel shirt, stirred and opened his eyes. Where am I? He whispered. Silver Creek, Lucy said. You're safe. He looked at her, confused. I was at home. Then everything went dark. I could feel something inside my head. It's gone now, she said. They're gone. But she knew it wasn't over. The small ship had escaped, yes, but the big one still hung in the sky above Wyoming, and it would know what she had done. Back in Nevada, the team at the lab had heard everything. Lucy's message, the explosion, the defiance, had been picked up by a dozen relay stations and sent straight to Luke and Maya. She did it, Maya said, staring at the screen. She actually took one of them down. Luke nodded, but his face was serious. And now they know we can fight back. That night, the main Vrax ship pulsed. Once, long and deep. A wave of energy rolled across the continent. Not a fear pulse. Something worse. Silence. Every radio, every phone, every screen, gone dark. The internet died. Satellites stopped sending. Even emergency radios crackled and died. The Vrax were cutting off the world, but not completely, in small pockets where people had battery-powered radios or old ham sets. The Phoenix signal still played. Recordings of laughter, songs, quiet voices reading poetry, a mother singing to her child, a man saying, "I'm here, you're not alone." These signals were weak, scattered, but they were alive, and the Vrax didn't know how to stop them because they weren't loud, they weren't angry, they were soft, human. Luke and Maya worked fast. They loaded the Phoenix signal onto portable drives, handed them to pilots, drivers, anyone who could move. "Take this," Luke said. "Play it wherever you go, from cars, from speakers, from phones. Don't let the silence win." Meanwhile, Lucy stayed in Silver Creek for one more day. She found food in an old supply shed, water from a frozen creek. She wrapped the two survivors in blankets and kept the fire going. By morning, the man could walk. The woman, younger with short red hair, remembered her name. Claire. "I was driving home," she said. "Then I saw the light. And after that, nothing. Just fear, like it was eating me from the inside." Lucy handed her a cup of hot tea. "It was." Claire looked at her. "Why didn't it kill us?" "It doesn't want dead people," Lucy said. "It wants fear. As long as we're afraid, we're alive. And useful." Claire shivered. "So what do we do?" Lucy looked toward the sky. "We stop being afraid." She knew the next step. The main ship, the mothership. It was still feeding, still growing stronger, and if it wasn't stopped, it would drain the whole planet. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. She packed her gear, helped the two survivors into her truck, and started driving south, toward the research base. 2 days later, she arrived. The gate was guarded. Soldiers with rifles checked her ID. When they heard her name, they called inside. Luke and Maya ran out to meet her. "You're real," Maya said, almost laughing. "I thought you might be a ghost signal." Lucy smiled faintly. "I'm real, and I've seen what they do." Inside, the base was busy. Engineers worked on transmitters. Doctors studied brain scans. Soldiers stood guard. The Phoenix signal played softly from speakers in every room. Calm music, voices, nature sounds. Luke showed her the plan. We've mapped the Vrax ship's energy pulses, he said. Every 7 seconds it sends out a fear wave, but in 9 miles between, there's a gap, a tiny window. If we time it right, we can blast the Phoenix signal right into that gap. Like slipping a key into a lock, Maya added. But we need power, Luke said. A lot of it. We're linking every working tower, every satellite, every radio station. When we hit them, it has to be everywhere at once. Lucy listened. Then she said, "What if they block it?" "They might," Luke admitted. "But this time, we're not just sending calm. We're sending something else." "What?" "Defiance." He played a recording. It was a mix. People from all over the country. A firefighter saying, "I ran into burning buildings. I won't run from this." A teacher. "I've calmed scared children every day. I can calm myself." A soldier. "I've faced death before. I'm not afraid of shadows." Ordinary people, speaking not from fear, but from strength. "This," Luke said, "is what they've never tasted." Lucy nodded. "Then let's feed it to them." That night, the team ran the final tests. The signal was ready. The timing was perfect. The launch was set for dawn. But the Vrax struck first. Just before sunrise, the sky turned purple. A deep, sickly color that spread from Wyoming across the sky. Then, from the main ship, a new pulse, stronger than any before. Not just fear, despair. It hit like a wave. People fell to their knees. Some cried, some laughed, wild and broken. Others just sat, staring, as if they had given up. In the base, alarms rang. Screens flickered. "It's targeting emotion," Maya said, reading the data. "Not just fear. Now it's going for hope, trying to crush it." Luke looked at the clock. "We launch in 2 hours. We have to hold on." Soldiers handed out radios, playing the Phoenix signal. Doctors gave calming shots to those who panicked. Lucy walked through the halls talking to people, reminding them. "Breathe," she said. "Think of something good. Think of someone you love." And slowly the base stabilized. Outside, the sky still glowed. But inside, the signal grew stronger. At 6:03 a.m., the countdown ended. Luke pressed the button. Across America, every working transmitter lit up. Satellites fired their signals. Radio towers sent out waves not of fear, not of anger, but of calm, of courage, of love. The Phoenix signal spread like light through darkness, and it hit the Vrax ship. Inside, the feeding chamber trembled. The Vrax floated in silence, used to the taste of terror. But now, something else poured into their minds. A child laughing, a couple dancing in the rain, a man saying, "I forgive you," a woman whispering, "We will survive." It was not food, it was poison. The Vrax shrieked, not in sound, but in thought. Their forms wavered, their energy threads snapped. They had spent eons feeding on fear, but they had no defense against hope. The ship shook. Cracks formed on its surface, and high above Wyoming, the black claw in the sky began to break apart. Lucy Bennett moved through the forest like a shadow. The air was cold, the ground covered in frost. Every step was slow, careful. She had been tracking the smaller Vrax ship for hours. It had landed near an old mining town called Silver Creek, long abandoned, its wooden buildings leaning like tired bones. Now, it was the Vrax's hunting ground. She stayed low, using the trees for cover. Her rifle was slung across her back, but her hand never left it. She wasn't just looking, she was learning. The ship hovered just above the town square, its dark, surface pulsing with that same violet glow. Thin tendrils, like black roots, stretched from its base into the ground, into the buildings, into the air. They didn't move like wires or ropes. They moved like living things, slowly spreading, searching. Lucy watched from a ridge above. Through her binoculars, she saw something worse. People. Not alive. Not dead. 3 of them standing in the center of the street, eyes open but empty. They didn't move, didn't blink. Their faces were frozen in fear, mouths slightly open, hands clenched. They were like statues, but they were breathing. One of them twitched, then slowly turned its head toward the ship. Lucy swallowed. She had seen this before, not with aliens, but with animals. A spider that paralyzes its prey and keeps it alive, wrapped in silk. A wasp that lays eggs inside a caterpillar, letting the young feed on it while it still lives. The Vracs weren't just feeding on fear. They were storing it. She backed away slowly, then crawled behind a fallen log. She opened her pack and pulled out a small radio, old and rugged. She had picked it up years ago at a military surplus store. It still worked. She turned it on, tuned it to a clear channel, DOS static, then a voice. Repeat, stay calm. Do not run. The fear is what they want. Repeat, do not panic. It was the emergency broadcast, weak, but still running. Lucy turned it off. She didn't need to hear it again. She already knew. She looked back at the town. The tendrils were thicker now, longer. They pulsed like veins, and the 3 people in the street, they were changing. Their skin looked gray. Their eyes had turned dull, like glass. Then one of them fell, not from a push, not from weakness. It just dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The others didn't react. They kept staring at the ship. Lucy didn't know what happened to the one who fell, but she could guess. Fed upon, drained, used up. She closed her eyes for a second, thought of the Coast Guard mission, how she and her team had found a fishing boat adrift. The crew gone, only one man left, curled in a corner, screaming about voices in the water. They never found the others, never knew what happened. Now she did. This was no accident, no storm. This was hunting, and Earth was the prey. She opened her eyes. Anger burned inside her, hot and clear, not fear, not panic. Anger, she knew, could be a kind of strength. She began to plan. She had no bombs, no army, no satellite. But she had something the Vracs didn't understand, human stubbornness. The will to fight even when the odds were impossible. She remembered a science show she once watched about how some animals fight back in strange ways. Meerkats stand on their hind legs to look bigger. Bees sting even though they die doing it. Humans build traps. She looked at the town, old buildings, dry wood, fuel lines from old generators, and the ship, floating, feeding, not expecting a fight. She could burn it, but fire alone wouldn't be enough. The Vracs weren't normal. Their ship didn't burn like metal. It absorbed energy. Deflected bullets. She needed something different. She remembered the thermite mix her brother once showed her, a chemical that burned so hot it could melt through steel. Magnesium and iron oxide. Simple, easy to make. And it burned in bursts, not a steady flame. If she could set it off in the right rhythm, maybe it would disrupt the Vracs' signal, like noise-canceling sound. She checked her pack. She had magnesium, strips from her emergency kit, iron oxide, rust. She could find that on old pipes. She had duct tape, wire, and a small battery. She could make a charge, but she needed bait, something to draw the Vracs out. She looked at the radio. Then she smiled. Back in Nevada, Luke and Maya worked inside a dusty warehouse turned into a lab. Screens lined the walls. Wires ran across the floor. Engineers, scientists, and techs moved quickly, setting up equipment. They were building Project Phoenix, the signal that could fight fear with calm. Luke stood in the center, holding a small device. "This is the core," he said. "It takes real human emotions, joy, peace, courage, and turns them into a broadcast wave. Not loud, not violent, just strong." Maya played a recording, a child laughing, a couple whispering, "I love you." A group singing around a campfire. This is our weapon, she said. A young tech raised his hand. But will it work? What if the Vraks don't care? They care, Luke said. They've spent centuries feeding on fear. They've never tasted hope. Not like this. It might be poison to them. They tested it on a small scale. A volunteer sat in a chair, hooked to machines. The fear pulse was simulated. His heart raced. Sweat formed on his brow. Then they played the Phoenix signal. His breathing slowed. His muscles relaxed. The fear faded. It works, Maya whispered. Now we need to send it everywhere, Luke said. But there was a problem. The Vraks had begun to block signals. Radio, TV, cell towers, static, then silence. Even satellites were going dark. The main ship was emitting a counter-frequency, like a shield. They're cutting us off, said an engineer. Luke looked at the map. Red zone spreading, pulses growing stronger. We have to get through, he said. If we don't, they'll drain us dry. At that moment, a weak signal came through on a backup line. It was audio only. First, silence. Then a child's voice singing. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Then laughter. Calm breathing. A man humming a tune, and then a woman's voice, clear and steady. This is Lucy Bennett. I'm in Silver Creek, Montana. There's a second ship here. It's feeding. I'm going to burn it. But I need you to listen. If you can hear this, send calm. Send peace. Send anything good, because I'm not doing this alone. The signal cut out. Luke and Maya stared at each other. She's using the Vraks' own network, Maya said. They're blocking fear signals, but calm ones. They don't recognize them as a threat. Luke grinned. She's smart. And crazy. Maybe both. Luke turned to the team. Boost that signal. Send it to every tower, every satellite, every radio that still works. Let the whole country hear it. As the message spread, Lucy crouched behind a broken wall in Silver Creek. She had set the charges, 4 of them, placed near the roots of the Vraks ship. The thermite mix was ready, the battery wired to a small remote. And the bait? She had turned on a speaker. It played a loop, a baby laughing, a dog barking happily, a man reading a story in a soft voice. The Vraks didn't like it. The ship twitched. The tendrils pulled back slightly. The 2 remaining people in the street turned their heads, confused. Lucy held her breath. Then slowly, the ship lowered. The roots retracted. The dark shape drifted toward the sound, not because it wanted to eat, because it didn't understand. And in that moment, Lucy pressed the button. The charges exploded, not with a bang, but with a bright, white flash, hotter than the sun. The thermite burned in sharp pulses, disrupting the Vraks' energy field. The ship shuddered. The violet glow flickered. One of the tendrils snapped, writhing like a dying snake. The 2 frozen people fell. The ship rose, unsteady, trying to escape. Lucy didn't hesitate. She raised her rifle and fired. 3 shots, aimed at the base where the roots had been. The bullets didn't hurt the ship, but the noise, the sudden violence, the defiance, it did. The ship spun, pulsed once in pain or surprise, and then shot upward, fast, vanishing into the clouds. Lucy stood in the glow of the dying fire, breathing hard. She looked at the 2 people on the ground. They were still breathing. Their faces were no longer frozen. One of them moaned. She knelt beside them. "You're safe now," she said, and for the first time in days, the air felt still, quiet, not with fear, but with hope. The Vraks did not speak. They did not send warnings. They did not ask for surrender. They simply began to feed. In Anchorage, the pulse hit again, stronger this time. Not just a wave, but a focused beam that swept through the city like a dark tide. People on the streets dropped where they stood. Some screamed until their voices broke. Others froze, eyes wide, unable to move or blink. Hospitals filled in minutes. Doctors ran from room to room, checking pulses, trying to wake the unresponsive. But there was no physical injury, no fever, no poison. The bodies were fine, the minds were gone. A child in a bedroom clutched her stuffed bear, sobbing, "Mommy, the shadows are talking." A man in a grocery store fell to his knees, whispering, "They're under the floor, they're coming up." An old woman sat on her porch staring at the sky, tears rolling down her face. "I can feel them eating me." They were. Deep inside the black ship above Wyoming, the Vraks gathered in their feeding chamber. They were not like humans. They had no faces, no limbs, no blood. They were shapes made of shifting darkness, held together by a hunger older than stars. They floated in silence, connected by thin threads of energy, sharing the taste of fear like a shared meal, one pulse, then another, each one stronger, each one reaching farther. The Vraks were learning. They studied human minds like a chef tasting a new dish. They found the deepest fears, fear of death, fear of the dark, fear of being alone, and they pulled on them like strings, and Earth gave them plenty. In Washington, D.C., President Garza stood in front of a camera, her face calm, but her hands slightly shaking. The teleprompter read the words, but she spoke from the heart. "My fellow citizens," she said, "we do not yet know the nature of the object in our sky. But we do know this. We are not helpless. Fear is the enemy's weapon. If we stay calm, if we trust each other, we take that weapon away." The broadcast went out across the country, radio, TV, phones, even emergency alert systems. The message was clear. Do not panic. Breathe. Stay with loved ones. Think of good memories. Some listened, some tried. But fear is strong, and when you cannot see the enemy, it grows. In Chicago, a man ran through the streets shouting that the sky was falling. Crowds followed. Stores were broken into. Police tried to stop them, but soon even the officers felt it. A pressure in the mind, a whisper at the edge of thought. You are not safe. You will never be safe. The Vraks were learning how to target. Not just individuals, but groups. Crowds fed them better. Panic spread like fire, and they fanned the flames. Back at the Cheyenne mountain base, Luke and Maya worked without sleep. Their eyes were red, their voices low and urgent. They had collected data from every affected area. They mapped the pulse patterns, studied the timing, the strength, the way it faded in some places and grew in others. "It's not random," Maya said, pointing at a screen. "Look, every 7 seconds the pulse peaks, and each time it's stronger in cities with high population density. More people, more fear, more food." Luke rubbed his temples. "They're not just feeding, they're farming." "What?" "They're not trying to wipe us out. They're making us afraid on purpose, building it up, like turning up the heat under a pot." Maya stared at him. "You're saying they want us to panic?" "Yes. The more we fear, the sweeter we taste." They needed proof. They needed a way to fight back. At a military research site in Nevada, a team had been testing the pulse on volunteers, people trained to stay calm under pressure, firefighters, medics, a few soldiers. One man, Daniel Ruiz, had walked into the test chamber with a steady heartbeat and walked out without even flinching. "His brain didn't react," Maya said, reading the report. "No spike in stress hormones. No fear response." "Why?" Luke asked. He focused on something else, his daughter's laugh, the way the sun feels on his face. He didn't fight the pulse. He just ignored it. Luke sat back. "So it's not about strength. It's about focus. If we can teach people to do that, maybe we can protect them. But teaching millions to stay calm in the face of the unknown was not easy." Meanwhile, Lucy Bennett drove south through Montana in an old pickup truck. The radio kept cutting in and out. Sometimes it played the president's message. Sometimes it screamed nonsense. Once it played a child's voice saying, "They're in the walls." She kept driving. She had lived in the wild long enough to know when a predator was near. The silence of the birds, the stillness of the air, the way the deer had run not from her, but from something behind her. She wasn't a scientist, wasn't a soldier anymore, but she knew animals, and she knew that every hunter has a pattern. She reached the edge of Yellowstone by nightfall. The sky was clear, but the stars seemed dimmer, as if something was swallowing the light. She set up camp in a small clearing, built a fire, and cleaned her rifle. She didn't sleep. She listened. Around midnight, she saw it. A second ship, smaller than the one over Wyoming, shaped like a twisted spine, descended slowly over a ghost town 20 miles east. It hovered just above the ground, pulsing with a soft violet light. Then, from its base, thin black tendrils reached down, touching the rooftops, the streets, the trees. Lucy watched through binoculars. Her hands were steady. "You're not just feeding," she whispered. "You're setting up a nest." She remembered reading about invasive species, how they didn't just attack, they changed the land to suit them, made it easier to survive, easier to hunt. This was no different. The Vraks were planting something, a signal, a trap, a way to make fear grow on its own. She packed her gear, put out the fire, and started walking. She didn't know how to fight a monster from space, but she knew how to hunt. And every hunter leaves a trail. Back in Washington, the Situation Room was tense. Reports came in from Ohio, Minnesota, Maine, more pulses, more victims. The military wanted to launch everything they had. Bombs, drones, even old nuclear warheads. But Admiral Cross shook her head. "We don't know what that thing is made of. We don't know if we can hurt it. And if we make it angry, it might feed harder." General Norton slammed his fist on the table. "So we just sit here while people go crazy?" "No," said a voice. Everyone turned. It was Luke on the video screen. Maya stood beside him. "We fight back," Luke said, "but not with weapons, with minds." He explained their theory. Fear was the Vraks' food, but the opposite, calm, courage, focus, might be poison. "If we can broadcast a signal that carries peace, hope, strength," Maya added, "it might disrupt them, like giving a sugar addict a plate of broccoli." The room was quiet. President Garza leaned forward. "Can you build it?" "We can try," Luke said. "But we'll need every transmitter, every satellite, every radio tower." "Do it," she said. "And do it fast." As the order went out, the sky above Wyoming pulsed once more, and from the main ship a single word formed, not in sound, but in every human mind who heard it. Soon. Lucy, walking through the dark woods, felt it. She didn't flinch. She tightened her grip on the rifle and kept moving. "Soon," she said aloud, "we'll see who eats who." The sky above Wyoming split open on a cold November night. It wasn't lightning and it wasn't thunder. It was something deeper, something that made the ground tremble and the dogs howl. Farmers looked up from their porches, coats pulled tight, breath turning to fog. Birds burst from the trees in silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. High above, a dark shape moved through the clouds. It was massive, shaped like a long, curved claw, its surface black and smooth like oil. It didn't burn as it came down. It didn't scream through the air. It just glided. Quiet. Slow. Like a shark swimming through deep water. No one knew what it was. Not yet. In a small building tucked into the side of Cheyenne Mountain, a man named Luke Hawthorne sat hunched over a computer screen. He was in his late 30s, with tired eyes and messy brown hair. He wore a faded blue sweater and had a half-empty coffee cup beside him. He worked alone most nights, tracking satellite paths, watching for strange signals from space. It was quiet work, boring even, until tonight. The radar had picked it up first, an object too big to be a plane, too fast to be a satellite, and now too still to be anything natural. It had slowed as it entered the atmosphere and stopped at 20,000 feet. No wings, no lights, just a silent floating shadow. Luke leaned forward, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He ran the data again and again. Each time, the same result. The thing wasn't just big. It was giving off a strange energy field, something that bent the signals around it like heat over a road. "This isn't right," he muttered. His assistant, Maya Ellis, walked in a few minutes later, rubbing her arms against the cold. She was younger than Luke, with dark curly hair and sharp eyes. She wore a green jacket and carried a notebook. "You still here?" she asked. "I thought you were leaving at 9. Luke didn't look up. "Look at this." She came over and stared at the screen. "What am I looking at?" "That," he said, pointing at a dark blot on the radar image. "It's not moving, it's just hanging there." Weather balloon, too big, too quiet, no signal, no transponder, nothing. Maya frowned. "Military? If it was ours, we'd know, and it wouldn't be hiding like this." She pulled up another screen, checking infrared data. The object was cold, colder than the air around it, but it was giving off a faint pulse, like a heartbeat every 7 seconds. "That's not natural," she whispered. Luke nodded. "Something's inside it. Or it is something." They stayed up all night, pulling data from every source they could find. Weather stations, air traffic control, amateur radio operators. People across the northern states had seen it. Some said the sky turned purple for a few seconds. Others said their electronics went dead. A farmer in Montana reported that his cows all turned and faced the same direction at once, like they were watching something. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the first call came in. Anchorage, Alaska. A hospital operator said thousands of people had collapsed. Not from sickness, not from poison. They were on the ground, screaming, clutching their heads, eyes wide with terror. Some were frozen, unable to move or speak. Others were crying, begging for help that wasn't there. Luke and Maya watched the news feed, stunned. "What could do that?" Maya asked. Luke's face was pale. "Something that feeds on fear." They didn't know the name of the thing in the sky yet. They didn't know it had traveled across galaxies, following the psychic scent of panic. The Vraks were ancient. They had no home. They had no need for land or gold or power. They only needed one thing: fear. They hunted intelligent species at their weakest moments. They found worlds at war, societies in chaos, people on the edge of madness. And then they came. Not to kill, to feed. Earth, with its endless wars, its anxiety, its constant noise and stress, was like a 5-star restaurant to them. In Anchorage, the Vraks sent out their first wave, a silent pulse, invisible, traveling at the speed of light. It slipped into homes, hospitals, streets. It didn't touch the body. It went straight into the mind, and it found what it was looking for. Deep in the brain, in the oldest parts, the ones that remembered when humans were prey to wolves and storms, the pulse triggered pure, raw terror. Not fear of anything real, just fear itself. A feeling that something was coming, that death was near, that the world was ending. People dropped, cars crashed, planes wobbled in the sky. In schools, children screamed for their mothers. In homes, adults curled into balls, sobbing. The Vraks fed. Back in Wyoming, Luke and Maya watched the reports flood in. The pulse had spread. Not just Alaska, parts of Canada, northern Michigan, even Greenland. "It's testing us," Luke said, "like a predator testing the herd." Maya looked at him. "What do you mean?" It's not trying to kill everyone. It's tasting, seeing how much fear we can give. She swallowed hard. So what happens when it decides to feed for real? Luke didn't answer. He didn't need to. In Washington, D.C., the call went out. Emergency meeting. The president, military leaders, scientists, all gathered in a dark room under the White House. Screens showed maps, red zones spreading across the north. Admiral Lena Cross stood up. She was calm, her voice steady. We've launched 3 missiles at the object. All veered off course at 10,000 feet. No impact, no damage. General Carl Norton, a broad-shouldered man with a sharp voice, slammed his hand on the table. Then use more. Use everything. We don't even know what it is, said Dr. Ellen Park, a neurologist. This isn't a war. It's an attack on the mind. We're not equipped for this. President Elaine Garza sat at the head of the table, her face calm but her eyes tired. What do we tell the people? Silence. Then Luke's voice came through the speakerphone. You tell them to stay calm. Everyone turned to the screen. Luke looked exhausted but focused. The pulse targets fear. The more afraid people are, the stronger it gets. If we panic, we feed it. So what? Norton asked. We just tell everyone to relax while monsters from space attack us? Yes, Luke said simply, because if they're calm, the pulse doesn't work. We've seen it in the data. People who were asleep, people in deep focus, they weren't affected. Only those who felt fear. Maya stepped into view. We need to spread that message. Not just here, everywhere. Radio, TV, phones. Tell people to breathe, to stay still, to think of something safe. President Garza nodded slowly. Do it. But even as the order went out, the sky above Wyoming began to change. The dark ship pulsed once. A deep, low sound felt more than heard. Then, from its underside, thin tendrils of shadow stretched down, like roots searching for soil. In a small cabin in the Montana woods, a woman named Lucy Bennett sat by the fire. She was in her early 40s, strong, with short brown hair and hands that had worked the land for years. She had lived alone for a long time, ever since she left the coast, guard after a rescue mission went wrong. She didn't trust cities, didn't trust noise. She trusted the forest, the animals, the silence. She felt it first in the deer. They stopped moving, all at once, every one of them facing east, ears forward. Then the birds went quiet. Her radio crackled. She turned it up. Repeat. Do not panic. Stay calm. Do not run. This is not a drill. The message cut out. Lucy stood, walked to the door, and looked up. In the distance, above the trees, she saw it. A faint purple glow in the sky, like a storm that wasn't there. She didn't scream, didn't run. She just watched. And in that moment, she understood. This wasn't a storm. This wasn't a plane. This was a hunter. And it thought Earth was its next meal. She went back inside, pulled a rifle from the wall, and began to pack her bag. She wasn't running. She was going to war.